Hi everyone, my name is Amrit. I'm co-founder and CEO at Zetwerk.
I remember during my MBA days, which is about 2 decades back, there was a lot of conversation about how India has leapfrogged the manufacturing phase of development and gone straight to services. This was exemplified by companies like Infosys, Wipro, TCS, which were bringing in millions of dollars of service led export revenue. Typically, the way most countries develop is they are first largely an agrarian economy, and then they become a manufacturing economy, and then finally services become a dominant part of the GDP. But India never really had a very strong manufacturing base, or a strong contribution by manufacturing to its GDP. But this is changing. Today there is a lot of interest about manufacturing in India. Part of it is because of government initiatives like Make in India and the PLI, production linked incentive schemes. But there is a bigger global reason for it, and that is that countries and companies find having only China as their dominant manufacturing setup to be high risk. And India is the natural choice to de risk themselves from the China exposure. And the infrastructure in India to enable companies to set up manufacturing has vastly improved over the last 2 decades. Within this kind of a macro setup comes a company like Zetwerk. Zetwerk is probably one of the fastest to unicorn kind of companies out there. They became a unicorn within 3 years of starting up. And Zetwerk is essentially an asset light manufacturer. Now, when you think of a manufacturer, you think of somebody who owns plants and runs plants. But what Zetwerk does is it works with hundreds of curated manufacturing partners, and it gives them software, it gives them technology, it gives them business, and it gives them funding to manage the cash needed to run business. And it is responsible for fulfilling the client orders. This is a uniquely Indian way of tech disruption. Most tech disruption in the West tends to be about removing the middleman, but I really think in India the the entrepreneurial energy, the existing infrastructure built by the small businesses needs to be leveraged, and this is the way to go about it, where you empower the small businesses instead of trying to eliminate them. Amrit Acharya, the founder of Zetwerk, spent 4 years in a manufacturing setup within ITC after finishing his engineering from IIT Madras. After that, he went abroad for an MBA, had a stint in McKinsey as a consultant before coming back to India to disrupt manufacturing. And the rest of the journey is full of twists, which I will not give away. But Amrit has had an amazing journey of discovering the right way to build manufacturing led business in India. Listen on to my conversation with Amrit Acharya about building Zetwerk and the evolution of manufacturing in India. You're listening to the Founder Thesis podcast, and I'm your host, Akshay Dutt.
Tell me about your process of ideation through which you finally reached to the Zetwerk idea. Talk to me about
Yeah.
that.
So when I came back to India, I came back in January 2018 and I decided in December itself. So I started talking to people. And the first person I called, in fact, was Srinath, who's my co-founder today. Srinath and I had gone to undergrad together. We had worked at ITC together. We knew each other for 10 plus years also. It was a very high trust relationship. And when I came back, I was talking to few people. I was exploring few ideas. But I think by Feb of 2018, it became reasonably clear that Srinath and I are going to start a company together. Now, what is that company? We don't know yet. But to me, that was, again, the step one, because I don't know, even if I'm doing the same idea, whether I would have started it by myself. I felt I needed a co-founder who was part of that journey. And after Srinath, we got a few other co-founders, Vishal and Ram. And that to me was step one, that, okay, we are going to do something together. I trust this, they trust me. And we don't know what it is exactly we will do, but we will figure it out. But amongst the things we were looking at, me and Srinath, we were looking back at our past again. And for me, I came back to my journey at ITC building in this factory. And I thought about it, like the way I had done it, I was managing hundreds of vendors, looking at 300, 400 crore of spend. I was doing it all on Google Sheets. I was doing it in a not very systematic, organized way. And when we pinged our friends at ITC back at other industries, nothing had changed. People were still doing these things in the exact same way. And I mean, I loved manufacturing through that journey of ITC. And I felt that there is a big gap of a software stack that can digitize that entire journey and unlock a lot of efficiency. And it felt like a white space. We got attached to the idea very quickly. And it also helped that Srinath, his family business was into manufacturing. So his father ran a small manufacturing unit, and that was his family business for
manufacturing.
So he was basically a steel fabrication vendor for companies like BHEL, L&T. Srinath's father is an archetype of some of the suppliers we work with today, where there would be these large companies who would give designs of machines or machine components. And Srinath's father had a factory who could convert that design into a finished product. And it would be something as simple as like a steel beam to something more complex like a machine component. But it would be for one or two customers only. These customers are also, in case of Srinath's father, all his previous employers. So that's how this relationship started. Srinath's father worked for L&T, BHEL for many years. And then when he set out and opened the shop, they were his first customers. And that is very representative of the typical SME manufacturer in India today.
Yes.
They're all engineers. Some of them are professionals who have become entrepreneurs. And they are risk averse also, because India has traditionally not been a very open, high trust economy. And new customer is equal to risk. New customer is not equal to ops. So we converged on this gap in the market through our collective experience. And I know what we do is very niche and esoteric to outsiders, but to us, it felt like a complete insider problem. This is something we were so familiar with over many years of tackling it professionally, that it felt a very natural fit to work on it as a business.
Yeah, I just want to clarify what is the idea here. You're talking of digitizing the entire or of digitizing the system of setting up a new manufacturing plant.
Yeah. Basically, like if you look at, it starts with setting up a new plant, or some machine is broken and you want to order a replacement. The way it works is, who should I get it made from? Where, let's say, I want to build a door. Let's take a simple example. You can't go to a shop and buy a door. No, there's no shop in India which will sell you a door. They will ask you, what is the size of the door you want? What is this paint? What color should it be? And then what are some of the aesthetic features you want? There's a lot of specs that go into ordering something even as simple as a door. Now take that and extrapolate it to machines, which are highly complex, or parts of infrastructure. So there is a lot of input that I want a machine which can do X, Y, Z. And then there are people who say, okay, I can make it for you. So that is the industry we are addressing. It's custom manufacturing. And the idea of Zetwerk essentially is, we work with these companies who want to get products made. We partner with these companies at the design phase, when these products are either conceptual, or there is some software like an AutoCAD file behind it, or people are still figuring it out. And we take that input. It can be something as simple as a hand-drawn sketch to something as complex as a very sophisticated design. And we bring it to life into a product we can touch and feel. And we do it by working with lots of SME manufacturers / contractors who can understand that design and convert it into a finished product. The role we play as a business is matchmaking. Once we get a design, what is the best way to get it made? A door ke liye, I can go to vendor A. For an aircraft engine component, I can't go to the same vendor. I need to go to somebody else. So we underwrite that. Who is capable of making what? Second thing we do is pricing, because these are all custom. There's no MRP concept. I'm not buying a laptop. I'm buying a machine.
It's not a mass produced thing.
Yeah, I'm buying a machine which somebody is making for me. So I have to figure out pricing for every transaction. We help do that. And lastly, we solve for fulfillment, which is, of course, the logistics of shipping the product from supplier to buyer, but also giving the customer real-time visibility. Like when you order food on Zomato,
you can
or Swiggy, you can see the whole thing. And that's a 30-minute cycle. Imagine a 3-month cycle where the customer has no idea. That is the world we are digitizing, where we bring complete tracking that, okay, your supplier has received the order. They've started manufacturing. They're in 5 steps of manufacturing. They're in step 1, step 2, step 3. Here's so many photos that are showing the work in progress. Finally, the product has been loaded onto a truck. Here's a tracker from the supplier's location to your factory. There is so much black box that is there in this industry, and we are throwing sunlight on it.
Okay, fascinating. Is this something which you understood from day zero that this is what we want to do, or was it an evolution that you started with a simpler, more basic service, and then it evolved into what you are describing?
So it started with much more humbler kind of aspiration. Initially, we wanted to build just software for people like me who were buying custom products to interact with various suppliers. And we wanted to build a SaaS product for the manufacturing industry.
So this,
and then
what right now happens through tenders. So you were essentially building something which would make that tendering process easier, where there would be a portal where the company would upload every time they had a requirement, and then vendors could log in, see requirements, place a bid, and then as the procurement manager, you can see all the bids at one place, and then you can compare and like something like that.
Have you seen our pitch deck?
No, I have a very close friend in the manufacturing setup, and we do very regular calls about his business, and so I'm just like,
this is what exactly our seed pitch. We will build this software, which does all the things you mentioned and a few other things. And that is how we raised our first $1 million of seed from KM Sequoia. We built the product. We went to market.
But why did you need seed money? Because it doesn't sound like it's a software which needs heavy investment.
Yeah, you're right. We could have gone either way. But that is where I think some of these decisions these are all very personal journeys. For me, I had come back from the US. My parents, I was getting married. My father was saying that I need some proof of success. Otherwise, I can't introduce you as my unemployed son. And also, I had a decent amount of student debt because I had gone for my MBA abroad. My co-founder, Srinath, also was in a similar but different life phase. So we felt that a little bit of capital can give us the cushion to take bigger bet. And of course, there's a lot of fixed cost involved in building software before you can monetize. It was a combination of those two things, honestly. But you're right.
Like, as two first-time co-founders, was it easy to raise the money, or did you have to listen to a lot of no's before listening to a yes?
Yeah, raising money, honestly, never gets easy. There is, of course, a little bit of familiarity with you and the business. And at some point today, the metrics and the cap table and the brand speaks for the business before you have the first meeting. But when we were raising as a seed at the seed stage, we had
you're raising pre-product, right?
Yeah, we were raising pre-product. It's all theory, and B, it is very esoteric. Like people, if my pitch today is, let's say,
there's no
resonating
US equivalent that you can say we have built the X for India.
There's no equivalent, and honestly, as first time pitching, I was also not great at pitching. I've also become better at explaining what we do over a period of time. So, so we heard a lot of no's. I think the whole process, took us 3 to 4 months, which I understand is not the worst. Like sometimes it can take much longer. But ultimately, and at the seed stage, really you're looking for founders, you're looking for investors you click with, and the investors you're looking for founders you click with. It is something like that. We ended up pivoting the business, but our investors are still big fans of us and all of that. We actually pivoted the business before our seed round had completed. We got the term sheet in April 2018. Our money came in August, but we pivoted the business in July. So we went back to K and Sequoia saying, hey, look, I know you signed up for a software business, but we want to pivot to a marketplace because of XYZ. And they were completely aligned because ultimately they felt that there was trust between them and us. And
at pre-product stage, you're really just betting on founders, not the idea. So I guess that would have been the approach. What made you pivot? Did you build and launch and get some market feedback?
No, sir, we built the product. It took us a couple of months from April to basically June. We built to the first version. We were pretty fast and we went to market. We went to the same customers who had told us there's a great idea on theory. And we went back to them saying, look, we have actually built it. Will you use it now? And then we started hitting newer problems. Our customer said, I really like it, but I'm not a decision maker. My IT is a decision maker. And then we went to IT in India. Sometimes they said, I'm not a decision maker. My IT in US is a decision maker. That happened in case of GE. They said, oh, I'm happy to introduce you to my CIO who's sitting out. And then we also realized it's a long cycle. And we were not prepared as a business for a long cycle. In terms of getting feedback from the market, whether what we're doing is the right thing. And B, us as founders, are we the most patient founders? I would say we are not. And at the same time, all these customers were asking us, can I use your software to discover new suppliers? like that came up enough times that they were not asking us in a very explicit way that build this for me. But in terms of feature requests we were getting, this seemed like a very common request. And that's when we realized that we can actually solve that first and go back to software later. And we pivoted the business to a marketplace business where we started introducing lots of new suppliers. And that just picked up like a rocket, like, true rocket ship.
What were you trying to sell it at? The SaaS this product, like what?
So we didn't care about pricing at all. We just wanted people to use, and we were happy even if somebody used it and for free. And then we through that discovered what is the other product features we need to build. We were in that mind space. But when we started offering the marketplace offering, it came with monetization on day one, because marketplace businesses are easier to monetize because there's a take rate which people are willing to pay, because both buyers and suppliers are better off after using your marketplace than without. The question becomes how much can you monetize? And that becomes a function of how sticky the product is, etc. But we started generating GMV on day one. We started with around 1 crore in the first month of operating. And then we went to 10 crores a month within 6 months. And that kind of growth shocked us also. We had definitely not seen or expected. And even our investors, like they were also pretty positively surprised. So our Series A kind of happened automatic. It was led by Excel and Sequoia 1 week before my wedding.
Okay. Nice wedding.
Yeah.
And how much was the Series A?
We ended up raising 9 million.
Okay.
Co-led by Excel and Sequoia.
And so when you pivoted to marketplace, was it like an Upwork kind of a place where people their portfolios are there, that this is my business and this is my portfolio and these are my ratings? Was that how you designed it, or like what?
Yeah, see, basically the approach was, if you look at a small manufacturer, there are a lot of parameters that go into the decision making, starting with what machines they have, what products can they make, what customers have they worked with before. These are the quality certifications they have. Basically, technical underwriting of what can they manufacture. And some of that information is already there offline in the form of a digital brochure. Like all of these SMEs, if you go to any other factory, they'll have these brochures, which is what they use as marketing collateral when they go and talk to an L&T, saying, this are all the things I can do and these are all the things I've done before. We just digitized it. So we created like this virtual work profile of a lot of these guys who didn't have websites even back then. And that was the offering. Like we just showed, we went with a catalog of 100 vendors organized in a very systematic way with very rich, detailed data, which was not available anywhere else.
This would have been like Zomato's version 1, where all he did, Dipender, was to put menus online. And so instead of looking for menus offline, you can look at menus online, but nothing else. Yeah. So you did.
Yes, you can say that. And that's how it started. And it started as actually, we are technically today not a pure marketplace business. We are what we call a managed marketplace, where the customers give us the order and we figure out where do we get it manufactured from. That is not how we started. We started as a pure marketplace where the customer selected the suppliers directly. We took a commission and we kind of moved on. But that approach also started hitting its ceiling, because ultimately in India, like you take any business which is good, like even a Zomato that you mentioned, the business is not constrained because of demand. The business becomes constrained because of supply. In the Zomato example, can you deliver food reliably day in, day out with the timelines that you promise and no spillage, etc.? Same thing goes for us. Like customers really like this, but somewhere our suppliers were making mistakes, and we felt we had to step in with a lot of software layer, with a lot of high touch, low touch operational layer that ultimately solved for our customers getting product what they wanted on time and with great quality. So that's when we made our second pivot into a more managed marketplace, where to the customer, we are the supplier on record. They're working with us, and we in turn execute it by hundreds or thousands of suppliers in the backend. So we raised our Series A, and we ended up raising it from Excel and Sequoia. And I remember a seed round was extremely hard. It felt very difficult. By contrast, our Series A felt like a walk in the park in some way, because there was so much inbound interest. I think there was word that spread that we had hit onto something. We ended up closing our Series A term sheet in 10 days, whereas our seed had taken much, much longer, 3 to 4 months. But at this time, the business was doing well. We were getting a lot of orders from customers, and we were operating as a pure marketplace. And what I mean by that is we connected demand with supply, and we took a commission from the supply, and we moved on. Largely like Amazon. where you facilitate the transaction. Maybe you do some services, which we didn't do even there. But we were just acting as a connecting agent. That was the bulk of the value.
You were like India Art, basically.
We were like India. And then we moved on. And then what happened was a lot of suppliers took orders, a lot of customers gave orders, and then execution was completely broken. Suppliers took orders and we're not able to fulfill. And customers came back to us saying, hey, you've given us such a bad supplier. We'll never work with Zetwerk again. Even though we had given our customers all the information they needed to take their own decision. But they still felt that we were responsible for that mistake. And I'm not saying we had zero responsibility, but it was also largely variables outside our control at that point in time. But that's when we realized that, okay, this is going to be a permanent challenge, because ultimately, while there is a lot of intent to do this, and we went back to our suppliers saying, hey, why are you delaying? And they came up with a bunch of reasons. Oh, my previous customer has not paid me, and hence I'm not able to start the new order. There's some labor strike. I'm not able to arrange a truck in time and put the product. All kinds of operational issues, largely. And we felt that if we want to go really deep, and if this is a business we believe in, we ultimately have to solve for these execution issues. We cannot walk away from them and tell our customers, look, it was your fault. You picked a bad supplier, even though we told you all the information that you needed. And that's when we pivoted to the second pivot was from being a pure marketplace business to being what we call a managed marketplace, where we take responsibility of the execution. So for a customer, they are giving us the order for getting a certain product made. And we make sure that the product is made as per spec, as per quality, as per timelines. And we commit to that. And we in turn run it through a marketplace model. But for offering a truly differentiated experience to customers, we have to solve for all these problems. We have to solve for working capital for suppliers. We have to solve for logistics. We have to solve for software for a lot of the entities. And hence, we are like a very strong business partner. If you ask any of our suppliers, they will not say we're not a agent. They will say we are the customer, because we are such a strong business partner to these suppliers that a lot of them today are become dependent and codependent on us, and vice versa. When we find great suppliers, that is 50% of the problem solved for us. And today, when a supplier joins the Zetwerk ecosystem, they get so many other benefits beyond just getting new orders from new customers. Help them with execution also, and net they become very integral to us, and we become integral.
But how? The beauty lies in the details. Like, how did you solve problems of small manufacturers? And this is such an unorganized sector, and you would have had to do a lot of first principles thinking around building solutions. I want to hear that process of how you solve these problems to make the supply smoother.
Yeah. See, it is a qualitative and a quantitative approach. A lot of times you have to talk to suppliers. And then similar to how we heard from our customers that they wanted to discover new suppliers, our suppliers also told us what they wanted. Number one thing they wanted was predictability of revenue. If you talk to a typical small manufacturer in the industrial sector, profile these entrepreneurs. So Srinath's father was one of them. He ran a fabrication unit in Trichy, and his customers were PHEL. Srinath is my co-founder, PHEL and L&T. How did he get PHEL as a customer? Because for 10 years, he was an employee at PHEL. And then when he quit and set up his own shop, BHEL was his only customer. And over the next 10 years, he got L&T as another customer. But they have only two customers, and their fortunes go up and down depending on how these customers are doing. And hence, what you will see is a highly concentrated business. The capacity utilizations are 40-50%, but it is not 40-50% flats through the year. Some months it is 100%, some months it is 0%, because the same guy is winning new sales, winning new orders, and executing these orders. And then and these are all fundamentally also engineers. When you talk to them, they'll say, sir, these are all waste of time. All I want to do is spend my time on the shop floor. I want to convert this design into a product. I don't like to go to customer, follow up for payments. I don't like to do logistics. I don't like to do all these ancillary things. I'm fundamentally a builder or an engineer, and an engineer turned entrepreneur. And so that's what we recognize that, okay, let us provide all these services to them so that they can focus all their energies on their core, which is turning that design into a physical product organizing for labor, organizing for machines, and truly enjoy what they do. This is why they had decided to become an entrepreneur, and we help them achieve that dream. Quantitatively, what we saw was if you break a manufacturing process into many steps, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 80% of the delays happen in step 1, which is that a supplier has to buy raw material and then he can push it into the manufacturing process. And they delay in buying raw material because they don't have money. Why do they don't have money? Because their previous customer has not paid them. And hence what they do is they buy that material on credit, or they buy it, try and get a loan from a bank. All these things take time. And they do it only if they've got an order. So they won't do it as a parallel process. When they get an order, that's when they'll start mobilizing money, material, etc. And that whole thing can take a month, because they will want to optimize for the rate. If they've got an order for 100 rupees, they will buy raw material for, let's say, 70 rupees. They will not buy it for 75, even if it is faster. So they're happy to wait. And we realized that was a big delay. Once they bought the material, they've already put in their capital. They're incentivized to turn it around. But they will wait as much time as they can to wait for that person. And that's when okay, let us solve that for you. And that's when today, that's what I meant by providing all these services for this. We help them with buying that material faster.
Today, you have a fintech division. You get them like a
we haven't formalized it in those languages yet, but we have partnered with various banks and financial institutions, so that tomorrow, if any of these manufacturing entities require working capital, they can be provided that on the click of a button, so to speak, where all the underwriting has been done ahead of time. And Zetwerk is the anchor. This is the strength of the anchor, which is us. A lot of financial institutions are willing to work with small manufacturing enterprises. And we have so much transaction data. We have so much volume of business that they have already done, that this is data that otherwise is not available to them. If you ask a bank, how do you fund this SME? They will say, I will take the 3 years bank balance sheet, or best I'll take their GST returns. It is not enough. Over and above, we're providing so much history that 9 out of 10 times there's been no quality issue with this supplier. And that 1 out of 10 times, it has been a very small minor issue. These are very rich, important information. And that helps with underwriting these kind of hopes.
Plus, you know exactly what is the value of the order. The amount of loan that he needs can be like auto-approved in the system.
We also know who is the customer. We know that the customer is, let's say, Tata Steel. It's a big customer. They are going to pay. Whereas in a financial institution does not have that information. They look at only paper and underwrite system.
Okay, amazing. Okay, so this is one unlock. That's step 1, which is the biggest hurdle in smooth supplies, which is getting them access to capital so that they can buy things quickly. You said you also did some workflow automation, ERP kind of tools for these suppliers. Tell me about.
We have good amount. It starts with something as simple as when, in India, when in a lot of these B2B transactions, you will notice that there is a lot of paperwork involved. For example, every time supplier has to load a truck, right? They have to make a document called a packing list, which will basically say what all is the contents of that truck. The truck has 20 items, XYZ. Okay. And because they're making huge volumes, they have to do it manually only. They have to see that, okay, these are the items that are going into this truck. That activity itself can take 6 to 7 hours, because these are big volume products. There's so much lying in their yard. They're not sophisticated systems to keep track of what is there, where. We have built software that can do it in 1 minute, because we know that this is a product that is being made. This product has so many components, and hence when you're loading this truck, this is the items that are going into the truck. So this is just one example. This is more on the technical side. Similarly, when a supplier has to raise an invoice, along with the invoice, they need 5-10 other documents. They need proof of movement of goods. They need actual weight of the product that was shipped. A lot of them are statutory and regulatory in nature. Some of them are more companies want this information. And again, we have provided all of this access where you can just print it, because it's all there in one portal. It's all linked to one project. Think of our software as similar to email. where instead of every row being like a new email, every row is one project that they're working on. And all the context of that project is in that image, starting with who are the customer, what kind of product it is, what are the documents, all attachments, everything there is in one place. So they don't know, hunt around looking for all of this. And it simplifies payments because tomorrow customer can't say XYZ document was missing and hence I'm paying you 10 days late. Thing is missing. So it's all there and digitized in one place.
For the customer, who's the vendor on record? Like the invoice goes from Zetwerk or from...
The invoice goes from Zetwerk.
Okay.
But the customers are aware of the model, so they know that this is how we're running it behind the scenes.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So basically, you are totally owning quality of the product, timeliness of the delivery. And to really own it, you need to make sure that your supplier works. I mean, that you have as much information visibility as you would have if it was your own plant. Like in your own plant, you would always have...
That is the nutshell. You're running thousands of factories through software versus owning these 1,000 factories and running them the old fashioned. That is the summary of our business.
Okay. So everything
we need to know our suppliers better than they know themselves sometimes. So try and go as deep as possible.
Okay. Are you also looking at like using machine vision and IoT and these kind of tools to further automate and to give you more information? The way I understand then, the more information you have, the better you'll be able to control quality. And so some of those kind of tools like IoT or machine vision could give you even more information.
We have run a few pilots. I won't say that we have anything at scale yet. See, what happens is businesses ultimately are simple. 80% of the value comes from 20% of the features. And we discovered that organically and inorganically. Now, of course, the remaining 20% is also important. And that's where some of these cutting edge frontier technology comes in. That there are a lot of examples. Like, for example, we would love to know how much electricity our suppliers are using because that gives us a sense of their productivity. And that is a classic example of an IoT use case that, how much, and you can further slice it. You can do it at an entire factory level, or you can do it at a machine level also to see what is the uptime of a specific machine versus historical precedents. Now, all of these things, I would say at this point in our company building journey are good to have. They are not critical or must have, so they are not in an immediate priority. But we see enough and more examples that we would love to do when we have development.
So what is the immediate priority? Like you said, is it not
priority? Yeah. Like immediately when we started the business, the first priority from a software point of view was to build for transparency. A, who is the supplier who's working on an order? B, what stage are they at? C, what kind of timelines are they following and things like that. That was the number one thing.
You needed to be able to predict that when it will be ready.
When is the customer receiving their product? And we can't give a hawa wala answer. We have to be very detailed. Okay, basis these forecasts and basis these are the suppliers who are working, you can expect your product next week or the week after. That was number one problem we solved. Next thing we've solved for quality. Is the product that we're shipping, is it the best possible quality? And what are the checks that have been done? The customers have said, I want these 10 things to be checked before the product is shipped. Have those 10 things been checked? Then there are modules on shipping. Then there are modules on customers to supplier communication. So we are building that operating system, which ensures that a design gets converted into a product. And what all are the steps that are required in that process? How much ever can be digitized over a period of time. Now, what happens is once we get this digitization, we start getting a lot of data. And one example of how we use this data is that packing list example I mentioned. Something which used to take 6 hours. Can we do it in 1 minute? A lot of it is through intelligence and data that the software generates. So that is our approach. Phase 1, build that infrastructure, convert analog to digital. Phase 2, build intelligence to convert digital into knowledge or actions.
Okay, amazing. Can you give me an example of an order which comes from a customer and then that whole life cycle of that order? Like
Sure. So one of our customers is Tata Steel, which is a large steel making company in India. So they are building a new factory in Kalinganagar. They're building a new steel factory. For that, they need a lot of machine components. I'll give one simple example. There is something called a conveyor calorie structure. You've seen a conveyor belt, which is where in an airport luggage moves, but in a lot of factories, material moves on these conveyor belts. Like, for example, in a steel plant, you will get iron ore from the mine to the plant. Below that conveyor belt is a steel structure, which is holding that conveyor belt in place. That is an example of a product we will be asked to make. That steel structure below the conveyor belt. We will get a design. It will, let's say, 10 crores worth of design. We will upload it onto our software where we have, and that design will 10 crores will have 1,000 drawings, 1,000 AutoCAD files. Each file will be like a part. Then out of those 1,000 files, there will be at least 5 to 10 suppliers who will be identified through, again, internally through software, and some part of it is manual, on who are the 10 suppliers we want to work with on this order. These drawings, 100 drawings each, will be assigned to these 10 suppliers. So that there has to be no overlap, because one mistake we have made as a company in year one was the same drawing sometimes went to multiple suppliers. So they made 2x the product, which ultimately we had to. These are the tiniest details that go wrong in manufacturing, right? When the process is done manually. Then for each of these 10 suppliers, these are the 10 steps we need you to follow. Step 1 is buy raw material. Step 2 is cut the raw material into the shapes that we want. Step 3, you weld it. Step 4, blah, blah, blah. Finally, you paint it. And then ultimately, you load it onto a truck.
These 10 steps are uniform across product categories, or have you got?
We have designed recipes that when we get a certain type of product, we say that, okay, this is the closest fit recipe that is involved in converting this product from a digital to a physical equivalent. And once at the recipe level, there is no change. But there are probably close to 100 odd recipes that we have within the company.
And this would be a manual process of deciding what recipe fits which product.
What
because it's an experience.
It's a manual process. Yes.
But eventually you would have it
largely. See, largely doesn't change. The next time we get a conveyor, it is the same. It is the first time we are doing a new product. That is when the manual step is high. The next time you do it, it goes through pretty routine process.
Like you spoke of that cycle of converting data to intelligence. So that would happen. Okay.
Yes. Then for each step, we have so let's say step 1, there are 10 steps. For each step, our software says, this is how much time we think it will take. Step 1 will take 5 days. Step 2 will take 10 days. Step 3 will take another.
And the software knows this based on past similar orders.
Yes. Okay. Software knows this basis past similar orders. And the final step is we have people on the ground who are project managers who have mobile apps. They will get a notification that today at supplier X, milestone Y is due. So we would like you to go and check. And they go and check and see that milestone Y has happened or not happened. And since they're there, they take a photograph. And that photograph is what gets sent to the customer, saying that this is the real-time status of your order today. And so much has happened. So that's the kind of end-to-end flow. And again, I'm solving for just timeline. There is layers of quality. There's layers of shipping, logistics. There's another step called production planning, where we want a customer has given us 10 orders. We want order 1 to be done first, order 2 to be done second, blah, blah, blah. There's an entire module which supersedes this module of tracking. So there's a lot of software. They all follow. A lot of it we have to build in-house, completely build in-house. Because while you could find modules of quality, modules of this thing, but we wanted to build like an integrated system which runs end-to-end smooth, completely smooth. And that did not exist. And that is what we have built.
This is fascinating that you have these quality inspectors, like these traveling quality inspectors who visit the various suppliers and ensure quality. So that is the primary tool to ensure quality.
Yes.
These inspectors would be taking photos, and these photos would go to the customer also so that he sees what is the progress. And amazing. Okay. Amazing. So at the core essence, you are a data company then. The ability that you have to give a predictable timeline to a customer to ensure the product reaches on time, all of that comes from the past data which you have collected, which lets you judge what recipe to use, how much time will it take. And am I correct in that understanding?
Yeah, if you look at us as entrepreneurs, we are generalists. I didn't spend a decade at Tata Steel figuring out how to make this conveyor belt structure. But the way we do it is, again, completely process driven, data driven, and technology driven. And that is what has allowed us a lot of scalability. Over a period of, some may say that we are a technology company who happens to be in manufacturing and could have chosen something else. Not that we love what we do, but that the essence of the business is process, data, and people. These three things combined to deliver the experience to customers that they felt was missing.
What do you mean by people here? Yeah, are you talking on your on-roll employees or the vendors you work with? Or?
Yeah, it is actually like a combination. The suppliers, of course, are the heart of our business. We find a good supplier, 50% of our work is done. Then because they are doing the actual hard work. Let's not forget that they are doing the actual hard work of building this product. We are their business partner and we help our suppliers become more successful than what they would have been without us. If we are not able to fulfill that promise, then our business does not exist because at some point it will catch up. Somebody may want to work with you temporarily, but if they're not seeing value over a period of time, then they will outgrow us. The second part of our business and is having a strong talent pool employee base within the company because we are not 100% digital company and we are completely open to, it's something that we own. And what I mean by that is that example that you said earlier, that recipe has to be chosen manually. So there are parts of the business which will be a combination of being done digitally and non-digital, combination of being done in a self-serve manner. Or of course, over a period of time, more and more things will be said, but we will be in that journey. And hence, like building a very strong engineering first company was very important for us. And engineering for us is not just software engineering. Engineering for us is actual hardware design engineering. So I think almost 60 to 70% of our headcount are engineers in some form or the other. Even our salespeople are also engineers who have become salespeople. They're not generalist salespeople.
They need to understand what the customer is ordering. Like from that perspective, they should be able to talk the same language as the buyer.
Yes. So we are a very engineering oriented business and software engineering, of course, very important part of it. But there is whole unseen element of how to make a product work the way it does. We are into so many categories. When we're into consumer electronics, we need to understand how does a speaker work so that we can add value to the whole design and manufacturing layer over and above just being a vendor who gets the product made. So we understand how a speaker works. We also understand how an aircraft engine works. That is the diversity that is there within our business because we touch into so many different markets.
What all categories do you cover?
So almost half of our business is what we call industrials, where we serve customers in oil and gas, aerospace, automotive, medical devices, infrastructure, oil and gas, these kind of.
This would be like machinery which should help them in their manufacturing.
Yes.
What you told me, conveyor belt example. So like similar thing.
It could be that. It could be a medical device itself. Like we have a few medical device customers for which we are making the actual medical device. The aircraft engine component is a real example where we make machine components which are ultimately going into a Boeing or an Airbus. Or some of we also make in an aircraft the plastic tray on which you keep the food. That is also a product category we do. So, it's very eclectic that way. So we do in oil and gas, we do a lot of work for refineries and we do a lot of work for pipelines. That is our industrial portfolio. Our consumer portfolio is we do a lot of work in apparel. We do home decor. We do electronics. Is a big segment for us.
Okay, like speakers you were saying just now.
Yeah, speakers or these, not Apple AirPods, but other brands.
Wearables.
Wireless, homeless, wearables, hearables, these kind of products. That's the range.
Okay. There is this broad trend of manufacturing, like companies wanting to diversify beyond China. And India traditionally is not seen as a favorable destination for manufacturing because of quality issues and labor issues and things like that. What's your take on this? Do you think that there are obstacles here that you as Zetwerk can solve and attract more global companies to shift their manufacturing base to India? Or are there like ecosystem issues which need to be solved at a broader ecosystem level?
Yeah. The answer to your question is all of the above. So if we look at China, actually is like a real ideal in terms of how they've built their whole manufacturing system. If you want to get a speaker built, as an example, you will find everything you need in 100-kilometer radius of let's take Shenzhen or a city like Ningbo. You don't have to go beyond that. You want like the speaker itself, you want the plastic chassis, you want the electronic component PCBs, you want the board on which to do the soldering. Everything you will find within that 100-kilometer radius. And that they have built over decades. Right? India, that ecosystem does not exist. All these, firstly, India does largely assembly. The components you still have to import from China. And even the components that you have to import from different places. You can't go to one entity and say, solve all of this for me. That ecosystem does not exist. Hopefully, that will happen with our country over the next 10, 20 years. And things like PLI, which are incentivizing the creation of domestic manufacturing, are very helpful towards solving that problem. Now, in the interim, so in the short run, China has a huge advantage over India or any other country when it comes to manufacturing. But what has happened in the last 1-2 years? COVID and tariffs have exposed the concentration of China as a single manufacturing destination for Western countries. In the last month itself, like last quarter, we don't have to look at examples of a month, year back. Last quarter, there was a huge, China had a big buildup of COVID cases and the country was practically shut. And you saw that impact felt across supply chains. So for example,
iPhone shortages, iPad shortages, and
chip shortages, iPhone shortages. Solar panels were not able to be manufactured and the entire industry was shut for almost a quarter. So people have realized that we can't depend on one country for all of our needs. Now, whether that shift becomes 100% to 10%, 20%, or whatever it is, that is up for debate. But definitely that trend is there. If you talk to customers in the US, the number one strategic priority is how to diversify into what they call a China plus one strategy. And China will still be the dominant country, but there is one more country at least which shares the load. The first move was to Vietnam, which has a lot of similar advantages as China, but Vietnam is a small country. It can only absorb so much demand.
Like Vietnam has that ecosystem, like you can get all the component domestically.
Not to the same degree as China, but it is a fairly sophisticated ecosystem compared to India. But of course, it has challenges of scale. It is countries only as big. And so the first wave of China plus one went to Vietnam. The second wave of China plus one is coming to countries like India. Because India ultimately is the only at-scale market which can absorb that kind of demand from Western countries. If you look at our example, we have 20% of our revenue coming from the US. And these are companies who are largely first-time buyers of India. They had never bought to India. And the problems that you mentioned are there. Working with an Indian supplier is not easy. There is so much diversity in India. A supplier in North India is completely different from a supplier in South India. Sometimes they don't speak the language the customers want. There are all kinds of cultural and technological and market issues. We are doing our bit to solve for that access for Western companies.
Okay. So 20% of your revenue is US exports, like you are exporting products for US company. Okay.
Yeah, 15% is US, 5% is Europe, 20% overall international.
Amazing. Okay. So you are then essentially acting as a layer to solve the quality issue which a Western company would otherwise face if they were to directly work with Indian manufacturers.
Yeah. See, I will again take a step back. So quality, of course, is extremely important. But quality is table stakes to do business. Okay. The biggest challenge with India, quality has been an issue, but biggest challenge has been time. Like people in India, we're used to overcommitting and under-delivering. So, that culture cascades down to the last bite. And that has been the biggest problem because at least in the West, people value predictability a lot. And to the extent they're willing to pay extra for that predictability, which is what China enjoys. China is a highly predictable market. till 2 years back. Last 2 years, China has also been as unpredictable as that has been the biggest problem. It's not been a quality problem. People are not moving outside of China because they're unhappy with quality. They're moving away because they're unhappy with the predictability.
Okay. There is this whole factory of the future vision of like robotic arms building everything, and those robotic arms are programmable to build whatever you want to. So you no longer have all of those labor issues which manufacturers face. Is that something which is your future for you to be running factories, those kind of robotic factories?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the trend. Now, the double click of that is it lends itself well into categories which are technically very sophisticated to make, like an automobile or a robot, as you said, or even a aerospace component. These are categories where, at least in our lifetime, I can guarantee that the process will become more automated than it is today. But when you look at some of the lower margin categories or the less sophisticated categories, like you take apparel, a t-shirt still has to be made the old fashioned way. There are people on the shop floor who take fabric, and of course, parts of it are automated, but they still have to stitch the product. Even the conveyor belt gallery example, you have to weld the item. Well, there is robotic welding, but for a conveyor belt structure, it does not make sense to get it done in an automated way. It's still far cheaper to do it. So my prediction is that at least bulk of north of 60-70% of manufacturing will still stay as is over the next 10-20 years. There are higher margin, more sophisticated components which are in the process of being automated and more efficient.
But do you see yourself owning that manufacturing process even more, like instead of outsourcing to a vendor?
We are open to it. Our general thesis has been, look, there is a lot of depth of manufacturing in India. That is why we exist as a company. Because if manufacturing, and now by extension, Southeast Asia, we are expanded our supply base. But there is a lot of depth of manufacturing. And we don't believe that when something exists, you create it again, just for the sake of creating it again. If you can tap into existing resources, that is the preferred approach. But you do run into situations where you try the hardest and you still find supply does not exist. Like the consumer electronics in India is a very good example. Because India was importing everything from China, there is hardly any local supply ecosystem to speak of. Now we can say we will wait 10 years for this ecosystem to get created, or we as a company can catalyze the creation of this ecosystem. And we have, in these situations, we will choose the second one, where we will play a more active role. We will create supply. Supply does not exist. But wherever supply exists, we don't want to create a fresh one. We don't want to compete with any of our suppliers. We want to be their business partners of choice. But at the same time, we recognize that there are gaps in the market.
So tell me about Z-Town. Does this come into that category of creating?
Z-Town is that example. Yes. Z-Town is a great example of that second one, where
what is
100%. Z-Town is a highly integrated facility for manufacturing hearables and wearables. It's a big facility that has been set up in Noida. It's one of its kind in India. If you look, and an example of product that gets made there are these earphones that we are listening to. 9 out of 10 earphones in India are imported from China, or even maybe 10 out of 10 are imported from China today. But we have so many local brands. You have brands like Moat, brands like Noise, which are completely homegrown brands, but they still have to depend on importing of products because it's just very difficult to make products. Like there's a very famous, I love this tweet by Elon Musk. Manufacturing is hard. People don't appreciate how hard it is to actually make. And there was still Z-Town. If you wanted to get it done in India, there was no option. Today with Z-Town, if you want to get products manufactured in India, you have at least one option. Hopefully, this will create an ecosystem of its own, catalyze more such plants, or even we are not worried about competition at all because we only do it in areas where the market is so big. Like you're talking about 5,000 crore market in which all of it is imported. How you're setting up one factory? You're setting up a factory which can do whatever, a certain amount of business. There is so much business to be shared. And hopefully the creation of one unit creates that ecosystem and also creates more units. Ultimately, the pie gets expanded because when the manufacturing is localized, the product becomes cheaper. Some of those savings can be passed to consumers. And hence the market size itself becomes larger. That's our approach.
Zetwerk is like a fully integrated, company-owned, company-operated manufacturing setup.
It is set up as a joint venture. One of the partners and the other partner is Mr. Shalom, who's the chief executive of, and it is a partnership between us and them.
So Shalab comes from a manufacturing background.
Yes.
Okay. So
Subject matter expertise is a subject matter expertise of these products.
Okay. So the operational efficiency, operational management that's what he's handling. Okay. Okay. Got it. So for these manufacturing hearables, everything is done in-house, or you would still need some components that you would either buy domestically or...
We have to buy, still, like majority of it is still has to be imported from China, unfortunately. So it is, if you quantify value on a scale of 0 to 100, previously it was 100% China. Today, through us, maybe we have brought it down to 90 or 85%, and 15% India. So the journey to make it 100% India will take a decade, because there are so many bits and pieces involved, and it never goes into the details. But unless you start, it will forever be 0% India. And that is how we should use that term. And there is a lot of opportunity and potential there.
But you are hoping town would be a catalyst where some Indian manufacturer or some Indian entrepreneur would be inspired to start producing something in India, so that you don't need to import it, but you can just buy it from him. And what Maruti did for automotive sector in India.
Well, it build the baseline tier one. So manufacturing of this language, there's the OEM, who's, let's say, Maruti. Then the tier one vendor who will make, let's say, the door of a Maruti. Then there's a tier two vendor who will make a door handle. And then there's a tier three who will supply the raw material for that door handle. So that's the integration that happens over decades. In consumer electronics, we're not even a tier one. So that has to be created first. Tier ones will create tier twos. Tier twos will create tier threes.
Why do you say you're not a tier one? How do you define what is tier one?
No, India is not a tier one, I'm saying.
India is not. Okay.
That ecosystem does not exist.
Got it. Okay. Got it. For you personally, what are your priorities over the next 5 years? What are some goals that you are chasing, or what are some of those transformation projects that you want to undertake at Zetwerk?
Yeah, so it's quickly becoming a large company, and we just recently crossed the 1,000 employee landmark, which is a milestone that we took our time to get to. Even though there are companies, we have had an approach where headcount should be thoughtful.
1,000 is very lean. You are a unicorn, and for a unicorn to have 1,000 employees is extremely lean.
Yes, we look at matrices such as GMV to headcount. And I would say ours would be very efficient. If you stack rank us compared to other companies, it's been very thoughtful. We can easily be 5x the headcount. I think there is no challenge with that. But being thoughtful about headcount has allowed us to be lean, and not be too worried about what's happening in markets outside. And especially in these kind of situations where you see a lot of stress on balance sheets and profitability. We were profitable last year.
Wow. Okay. So you're saying you no longer need external funding now, like you're at that stage?
It's in some ways, like the business generates cash, but the business does not generate as much cash as we would like to fulfill all of our opportunities. So for example, if you want to make 100 crore investment and the business is generating 10 crores of cash, we don't want to wait 10 years. So sometimes you may need capital.
Z-Town kind of expansions, those bets need capital, or even I think
but
international.
The thing is, international. But the good thing is it's completely our choice. You can choose to do it or not. We're not obligated by any situation. And so that was one goal for us, to reach this milestone where we are in charge of our own destiny to whatever extent. And we reached that last year in a market where it is completely unfashionable to do. There's too much capital at play. I think our next big milestone is, so we are currently doing around $1.5 billion of GMV. And manufacturing ultimately is a scale business. The bigger you get, the more economies of scale you unlock through various channels. And I think over whatever time period we have to expand that opportunity set from 1 billion to 5 to 10, I think would be important for us, because one is purely looking at it financially, but second is with scale, our ability to help our manufacturing partners, our ability to help our customers actually meaningfully. Of course, as companies become larger, the problem is they also become less productive. So we have to be mindful of that, which is why we look at headcount very thoughtfully. Even if we can afford, does not mean we will spend. But at the same time, we have to focus on growth, because growth unlocks a lot of levers for us. And I would say that's the primary.
What levels does growth unlock? Like, how does it make you add more value?
Then, like scale as an example, as I said, where today, if you look at, we are operating in industrials as a category. We are one of the top 10 buyers of steel in India, and the companies ahead of us in the list would be like all well-known names like your L&T or Tata, etc. And we have reached this in 4 years time period. Now, because of that, what happens is when you become such a large buyer of a commodity, you are able to have some influence at the price at which you're able to buy these commodities. And some of these pricing benefits you keep for yourself as a business. But most of it gets passed on to the manufacturers you work with. And hence, if a supplier works with Zetwerk today, their cost of manufacturing is lower than what they would get if they did not work with us. And that becomes a big moat for the business over a period of time. And there's just one example of where scale. There's similar other examples around capital and things like that. So growth in general is a priority. And then within that growth, I would say international is also a priority. Today, 20% of our revenue comes from the US. There is no ceiling on that number. It can be anything we would like. Of course, we are fundamental believers of the India growth story, but maybe a year or two from now, our growth in India will reach a phase where we will grow along with the size of the economy. If the Indian economy grows, we will continue to grow. And hence, we will have to look for newer avenues. And international is one such thing. We have not reached that yet. But the third lever is international supply, which is what we have started. Today, we have big operations in Vietnam. Vietnam is our second home market from a supply point of view. And that again unlocks a new type of demand. It unlocks a new type of supply. It's a very kind of cascading effect. So our approach in general is to be a global company. It's built from India, built for the world. And we will just continue delivering on that.
So you can now do like a blended manufacturing where something is getting done in India, something in Vietnam, and it is all getting shipped to the US, for example.
We already do that. So there are parts of our business which we try and avoid it, because some of these things look good on Excel, honestly. When it comes to manufacturing, you want to keep it as simple as possible.
Okay.
Find one supplier, not 10, if you can. And within that one supplier, try and do all of it in that one facility. It's just easier. There are situations where you want to mix and match, and we are very well positioned to do it.
Amazing.
If you like the Founder Thesis podcast, then do check out our other shows on subjects like marketing, technology, career advice, books, and drama. Visit thepodium.in, that is thepodium.in, for a complete list of all our shows.